people don't know what I look like until now. Until they start going to the movies. They're gonna see my face. Big deal.
Hey, what's good? It's Omg Hawk, one man gang, back at y'all with another one. I hope everybody getting to it the way they need to going into this holiday season. Whatever holiday that is for you guys, I hope you guys enjoy it. Today's video, we're going to be exploring a case you might be familiar with if you a reality TV show / jail documentary buff such as myself. A&E, or Arts and Entertainment Television, has brought us countless TV docs over the years which have given us insider views of all aspects of our criminal justice system, from investigation to incarceration. In December of 2019, they delivered again with a 4-episode series titled Behind Bars, Women Inside, a series documenting daily life for a group of inmates and staff at Worcester Massachusetts Regional Correctional Facility in Chicopee, Massachusetts. One particular point of focus in the first 2 episodes really piqued my interest, and I thought it would make a great video. There's a lot I'm going to touch on, so please allow me to get right to it. Episode 1 of the A&E show introduced us to the very charismatic and equally aggressive Victoria Diaz, aka Baby D. Baby D was 21 years old at time of filming and was being held on charges of breaking and entering and assault and battery. She allegedly broke in the house, assaulted her best friend who was having an affair with her boyfriend.
Why you here, bitch?
Her dominance of the pretrial pod that she was housed in became pretty apparent once we were introduced to Crystal Lugo. No AKA, just Crystal. Crystal was being held on charges of kidnapping, assault and battery with a dangerous weapon, as well as intimidation of a witness. The A&E show aired this segment from a News 12 New Jersey broadcast regarding Crystal's case.
Authorities today calling the scenario an organized torture chamber. An unidentified teenager from New Jersey taped to a chair in the basement of a home in Massachusetts. News 12 New Jersey's Eric Landskroner has the story.
Police in Massachusetts say it was a few days after Christmas when they received a call from a juvenile being tortured in the basement of a home. When they arrived, they say they found a 16-year-old sitting on the edge of a mattress, crying and scared. She told police that about 8 people, 4 of them in court Wednesday, stood around her as she was tied to a chair, burned with a cigarette, and her head was shaved. All of it retaliation for what she told officers was a home invasion that they believe she had set up.
The victim in Crystal's case was a teenage girl who Crystal and her co-defendants believe set up a home invasion that they were victims of on December 27, 2017. The real drama of the first episode of the TV show is when we learn that the victim in Crystal's case was a close friend of Baby D. Although I'm paraphrasing, Baby D said that although the victim was not a blood sister to her, they lived together for a good period of time and she looked out for her as a little sister nonetheless. Add a can of fuel to that, we also learned that Baby D was an alleged member of the Kilby Street Gang, a Central Mass area street gang which Crystal alleged was responsible for the initial home invasion. Crystal was moved to segregation for her own safety after Baby D informed correction staff about her relationship to Crystal's victim. A rumor that a paid contract was placed on Crystal's head by Kilby Street Gang members ultimately led to her being transferred to another facility in the 2nd episode. Great 4-episode series. I would recommend everybody check it out if you haven't already. Today, we're going to dig deeper into the Kilby Street Gang associated with the case and the unbelievable timeline of events leading up to Crystal's incarceration. Just a warning, as we move further on into today's video, the details become pretty intense and cover some sensitive subject matter. Viewer discretion is advised. If you're still here, I appreciate you. Do me a favor and tap the like button and subscribe for more content. Kilby Street Posse, as it was first dubbed, is a neighborhood gang with origins on Kilby Street in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Worcester
is a decent-sized city in Central Mass with a current population of about 185,000 people. Kilby Street is a small residential street in the main south neighborhood of the city, which has been plagued by violence and plight since the early 90s. The Kilby Street Gang has gained numbers and notoriety since the mid-2000s and has since grown to be the largest gang inside the Worcester County Jail in 2020. Kilby has been responsible for numerous murders and countless shootings in the Worcester area, as well as other serious crimes involving narcotic sales and even a twist-filled high-profile human trafficking case, which we will touch on more in a few. But first, we're going to go in on a couple of the earlier incidents that rocked the city of Worcester and made Kilby Street infamous. Over the years, Kilby Street has been at war with many different factions at many different times.
Kilby versus Worcester, nigga.
But one of their longest lasting and well-documented feuds is with the Providence Street Gang, another Worcester City street organization. On November 30th, 2011, at around 2:30 p.m. on a cold, bright, sunny day, members of Kilby clashed with the Providence Street Gang directly in front of Worcester City Hall. As the fight ensued, a 17-year-old from Kilby's side discreetly pulled a gun and shot 21-year-old Javier Santiago. Santiago, better known to his friends as Harvey, was struck once and passed away from his wound. Tragically, just 3 days before his murder, Harvey's girlfriend would give birth to his first child. Harvey's family and friends would endure even more grief as it was reported by Worcester police on December 1st that he hadn't been shot, rather that he died from a medical complication triggered by the fight. Worcester police would issue a statement on December 2nd that they were wrong in their previous day's statement and Harvey had in fact been shot in the chest, which was confirmed by an autopsy. Nathaniel Robinson would later on accept a plea in which he would plead guilty to manslaughter and serve up to 11 years for Harvey's death. Fast forward to June 26, 2015, a longtime friend of the late Harvey named David Leondo was told that Harvey's headstone had been stolen and removed from the cemetery. Later that day, upon arriving to visit his late friend's gravesite, Jose Laura, a Kilby Street member, sped by in a vehicle and fired at the gravesite, striking David in the head and killing him. All reports indicated David was never involved in the streets. Jose fled to the Dominican Republic but was captured and returned to Massachusetts to face charges in 2016 when he was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison. In September of that same year, the Kilby Street Posse would garner some more unwanted notoriety, and Jose Laura would gain the company of his fellow posse mates as 7 members of the gang were arrested for operating a human trafficking organization in the Worcester County area.
The L at the L.
Court documents claim that Fabian Beltran and other gang members took advantage of women with heroin addictions by forcing them to post ads for services on websites such as Backpage and Craigslist. The girls were forced to complete these services and hand over all proceeds to the members of the gang in exchange for heroin. Sometimes the drugs were even withheld from the girls as cruel punishment or incentive. Beltran was convicted and sentenced to 6 to 8 years in prison for human trafficking and 4 to 5 years for deriving support from a prostitute. We would soon see Beltran again, as in 2019, the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office would send up indictments charging Beltran's lawyer, Blake Rubin, a former candidate for the district attorney seat, and attorney Angela Kavanaugh of conspiring with Beltran to bail out the key witness in the sex trafficking case and relocate them to Maine so that they would not be able to testify against him and other gang members. Kavanaugh was representing the witness who was incarcerated on an unrelated charge when it was alleged that she discussed whether or not they would be able to get her client bailed out and off to Maine unbeknownst to the district attorney's office. Beltran was given immunity to testify on behalf of the prosecution. Kavanaugh and Rubin were both found not guilty of conspiracy and witness tampering in June 2021. Kilby definitely stamped their mark on the city of Worcester and surrounding area. After learning everything I could about the gang, I understood very well how serious the threat on Crystal could have been and why the prison decided to move her for her safety. Her transfer was the end of her story on the show, but I wanted to explore the case that piqued my interest initially and brought Crystal to jail in the first place. Around Thanksgiving 2017, while many of us were enjoying the start of our holiday season, a 16-year-old girl had ran away from home in New Jersey. According to reports, she had been in Massachusetts where at some point previously she attended Job Corps in Fort Devon, Massachusetts. Job Corps is a residential education and job training facility that is free for youth ages 16 to 24.
I told you.
Her time at Job Corps gave her the connections and familiarity with the area to be able to sustain herself by staying with various people in different locations around Central Mass for a month and a half. Unfortunately for her, things would take a way left turn for the worst, and on all days, Christmas. December 25th, 2017. The 16-year-old runaway was picked up in Leominster, Massachusetts
Leominster?
by 23-year-old Crystal Lugo, 19-year-old Eulaine Ortiz, and 24-year-old Ibrahim Bural. She was brought to 10 White Terrace in Auburn, Massachusetts, a small single-family home owned by Crystal's brother, 19-year-old Christopher Lugo. Reports state the home had no heat or running water because someone had stolen the copper piping. He was heating the home in the middle of winter with an electric oven and a fan.
Professional hood shit.
Crystal was staying here with her 18-month-old child at the time. Multiple people were partying in and out of the home throughout the week, and drug and alcohol use was heavy. Ibrahim, aka Ace, was reported to have been at the home with the runaway hanging out until he left sometime early Christmas morning. Sometime Christmas Day, Christopher and the runaway girl smoked marijuana and took Xanax pills together. Christopher allegedly added more crushed up Xanax to the marijuana in order to incapacitate her. According to reports, once drugged and unconscious, the runaway was taken advantage of by an unknown number of individuals.
Whole squad ran do that shit, yikes.
The 16-year-old runaway was unaware anything had happened to her until a day and a half later when she was informed by Christopher about the laced marijuana and the assault that took place while she was unconscious. Phone records proved though Ibrahim was not at the White Terrace residence on Christmas Day or the 26th, he had been in contact with the victim by text and calls both days and into the early morning hours of December 27th. At around 6 a.m. that morning, two men bust into the home with guns in an attempt to rob the occupants. The runaway girl told police she heard the two assailants demanding to know where the weed was before shots were fired inside the residence. Crystal was in the home with her child at the time and said she was in fear for their lives as her brother Christopher was pistol whipped. The two assailants would later be identified as Ibrahim Ace Bural and 22-year-old Zabiel Feliciano, both of Worcester, Massachusetts, and members of the Kilby Street Posse. Police did not specify if any of the runaway's texts or calls held any evidence as to whether or not she was involved in setting up the home invasion, but Crystal most certainly believed she did. The incident was not reported to police at the time, in which Crystal, Christopher, Eulaine, and a fourth man at the home, named Yariel Torres Abi, became certain that she had orchestrated the robbery with Ibrahim. Crystal attacked the victim in front of the home in freezing temperatures, forcing her to fight while she was barefoot. Once neighbors started to take notice, she was subdued by the group and forced into a room in the basement. The room only had a mattress, a dresser, and the chair that she'd eventually be duct taped to before being tortured for hours. Once bound to the chair with the duct tape, Crystal took the victim's phone and the torture began. She was beaten and held down while an unidentified female referred to only as Katie burned her with cigarettes on her collarbone area. Another person held a machete to her neck while Crystal threatened the victim, saying if she continued to lie, the blade would push deeper against her throat. Yariel Torres Abi shaved the victim's head while she sobbed. Crystal left the house with the victim's phone so she could examine its contents while on her shift at work. By the time she returned to the residence at White Terrace, she was more sure than ever that the victim was guilty in setting up that morning's robbery attempt. But fortunately for our victim, her ordeal would soon come to an end and Crystal wouldn't get the chance to impose any more Guantanamo Bay style tactics. Auburn police received information from two confidential informants that a young girl was in the home and that she needed urgent help. Upon arrival at 10 White Terrace, police entered the house where they found the young girl sitting on the floor in the basement room. Officer George Ranos held back tears during his testimony, in which he referred to the basement room as a torture chamber and makeshift interrogation room. He found the victim sitting on the floor, whimpering, as she was too traumatized to even look at the officers. Officers observed yellow duct tape, cigarettes, an iron, and a pot of water in the room as well. An officer noticed a Christmas bag full of hair on the floor and also noticed the victim was wearing a knit hat. Upon asking her to remove the hat, it was apparent it was her hair in the bag. Auburn police obtained a search warrant and collected the bag of hair along with mason jars containing marijuana, prescription pills, as well as vials of an undetermined brown liquid substance.
What kind of shit is that?
As well as evidence from the earlier home invasion. The victim was interviewed by detectives and gave detailed statements regarding the terrible events that took place that holiday week. She was later on reunited with her family as they headed to Massachusetts as soon as word arrived that she was found. Auburn police arrested Crystal and Christopher Lugo, Yariel Torres B, and Ureli Ortiz on various charges including kidnapping, assault, and witness tampering. Christopher Lugo was also charged with the indecent assault but ended up pleading guilty to kidnapping and was sentenced to 2 to 3 years in prison. Crystal Lugo pled guilty to kidnapping, 2 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon, assault and battery, and intimidation of a witness. She was sentenced to 4 years to 4 years and 1 day in state prison, followed by 2 years probation. Yariel Torres B pled guilty to kidnapping, 2 counts of assault with a dangerous weapon, and assault and battery. He was sentenced to 3 years to 3 years and a day in prison, followed by 2 years probation. Ureli Ortiz's sentencing information wasn't available at the moment.
Yeah, I know. I flooded y'all with a whole gang of information, and it's a lot to wrap your head around. So if you are still here, I do appreciate you. Shout out to the whole 508, Auburn, Worcester, Central Mass, everybody up there getting to it for this holiday season. Whether you're trying to get right with your family, stack your money up, put plastic on your windows because it's leaking some cold air in. Whatever y'all doing, I hope it works out the best that it absolutely can for you. And I mean that. You know, as a parent, this case really tugged at me a lot because, you know, I can only imagine if, you know, my child ran away from home and had to run into some of the horrors that she felt. It's different than the stranger creep in the van, the creepy old pedophile guy that lures her away or abducts her because, you know, at some point she had some level of trust. This was her peer group. So at minimum, I didn't think that she would ever feel that she would fall victim to some of the atrocities that she had to face. And just the fact that all this trauma happened so close to the holiday season, I know it's so unfortunate because it's going to be a painful reminder every holiday of the trauma that she had to endure. And I don't want to call her attackers monsters because everybody in this case seems extremely young and extremely misguided. And it just seems like a sad situation all around. And it's heartbreaking. So, you know, my heart goes out to her. I hope she could find some kind of peace. You know, I hope she got good family support around her. And, you know, I just hope everything works out as best as it can for everybody involved. You know, criminals and victims alike. Just, you know what I'm saying? The whole situation was just tragic.
I feel like the real heroes of the story are the 2 individuals that saw what was going on inside the house and decided that that was too much and needed to get the police involved. I feel like they saved 5 lives instead of just hers because the way it seemed like it was escalating, it was going nowhere good, and there would have been a lot longer prison sentences for everybody involved if they hadn't stepped in and stopped it when they did. So, man, shout out to them for having a piece of a conscience left. And with all that being said, if you got some youngins around, this to my OGs and people like me, if you got some youngins around, check in with them, talk with them. You know, make sure everything is all right. Try to give them a little bit of guidance because you never know, they might need it. And even if they ain't trying to hear it, you know what I'm saying, just try to check in and drop what you can. And for all my youngins out there, out partying, wilding out in the streets, half in the streets, just out there partying in general, especially young girls, stay safe. Don't trust everybody around you. Young men, have a backbone. I mean, I'm sure everybody in that room didn't feel like what's going on was right, but that mob mentality shit is real. So, you know what I mean? Be yourself, stand on what you think is right,
And just remember, that could be your mom or your sister. You know what I mean? We gotta protect these women, and we gotta really, really, really protect ourselves too, because, you know what I mean, we throwing our lives away just going with the gang, going with the moment, going with the energy, and, you know what I mean, at the end of the day, we ain't savages, we human, you know what I mean? That's real important, so stay well, stay safe. It's one man gang, OMG.